My grandmother, 1927 to 2017. Born in 1927, my grandmother was a child of the Depression era. As a result, she excelled at recycling, repurposing, and saving long before they became the popular and politically correct things to do. It was a long-standing joke in the family to remind her each time she unwrapped a gift that she could rip the paper as it was no longer necessary to save it for reuse. While she always smiled and played along, if you paid attention, you could tell it pained her to be wasteful. It simply wasn't in her nature. My grandmother met and married my grandfather, a fun-loving man who always had a smile on his face and loved nothing more than to laugh, have fun, and make sure those around him were doing the same. He lit up every room he entered, and Grandma was perfectly comfortable to melt into a supporting role in the background. This is where she shined. While Grandpa was joy personified, Grandma was the glue that held everything and everyone together, with her pragmatism and overwhelming stoicism. Grandma and Grandpa had 7 children, the first of which died shortly following childbirth, and only reinforced Grandma's inclination to stoicism. During the 50s and 60s, she was a stereotypical stay-at-home mom, keeping a neat as a pin house, completing the shopping, making sure dinner was on the table, and raising the children. She reveled in her routines even after the children grew up and moved out. As a great testament to her mothering skills, all of her surviving children grew up to be intelligent and strong individuals, 2 attributes that meant a great deal to her. She attended church regularly and wouldn't miss important and many less important family events. She was always present. She freely gave her time, support, and attention to the people she loved, the greatest gifts she could bestow on any of us. Many of her adult children, and at least one adult grandchild, me, moved in with her during major life transitions. She refused to allow any of us to pay rent or even contribute towards regular bills. She did whatever she could to help us get back on our feet and on our own. She understood pride and dignity and never allowed those of us adults who had moved in with her to lose either one. The night before I moved out of my grandma's house, she came downstairs and stood next to me. When I looked up, she had silent tears streaming down her face. I simply stood up and hugged her. She cried, then turned and walked back upstairs without a single word. This is when I realized that she found flowery emotional words difficult, if not impossible. I also realized I'd never seen her cry before, not even when my grandpa passed in early 1990. By allowing me to see her vulnerability, I knew I'd witnessed something special. I also knew she loved me unconditionally. Over the years, she managed to collect a few hobbies. She loved completing word searches, crosswords in pen, playing golf, square dancing, playing card games, gardening, gambling, drinking beer, and smoking cigarettes. Those of you who claim smoking cigarettes is not a hobby never saw my grandma smoke. I would watch her smoke cigarettes for long periods of time when I was a child. She was an expert smoker, elegantly holding her cigarettes and allowing the ash to get nearly as long as the unsmoked portion of the cigarette before flicking her ashes into the ashtray. I never saw an errant ash fall outside the ashtray. Best of all was when she exhaled perfect smoke rings, multiple rings in a single exhalation. I was completely mesmerized knowing I was witnessing an artist in action. Never have I seen another person smoke as gracefully as my grandmother. She ignited my love of word searches, crosswords in pen, playing card games, and gambling. My earliest memory of gambling with Grandma is when we met up with my grandparents in Carson City, Nevada. I was about 5 years old, and she allowed me to pull the handle on the slot machines. When the bells dinged and coins fell into the metal basin, I was immediately hooked. Imagine my surprise when I was told I wouldn't be able to legally gamble for many more years. I counted down the days. Once I attained the appropriate ages, Grandma and I attended many bingo games and casinos together, a great number of which she won at. She was amazingly lucky. She never gloated when winning at anything and didn't even seem to be excited or surprised by her wins. She just took her wins and losses in equal stride. She and my grandpa had a camper that they would take on camping trips. I was completely enthralled by the camper and overjoyed when we finally got to go camping with them so I could sleep on the loft bed in the camper. It seemed so glamorous compared to the usual tent camping I'd done with my parents. While camping with the family and my grandparents' square dance friends at Detroit Lake, my grandmother took me under her wing and taught me rummy, gin rummy, spades, and started trying to teach me bridge. While I never caught on to bridge, I immediately took to the others and hungered for more. She allowed me to sit in as a relief player with her friends, and I observed how she interacted with other ladies. She was honest, trustworthy, and was far more dignified than any of them. She mostly listened in silence to their gossiping and complaining, only occasionally delivering a snarky one-liner. She probably heard hundreds of secrets that she never spoke a single word of to another soul. While I enjoyed all the card games she'd taught me, there were none I loved more than Seven Pays. Seven Pays utilizes cards, dice, counting, luck, skill, and gambling. It was, in my opinion, the perfect game. I'd save my pennies in a jar in anticipation of our visits with Grandma. When she and Grandpa were scheduled to visit us in California, I'd watch out the big front picture window until I saw their car come around the corner. I'd run out to meet them in the driveway, giving them both hugs and kisses before immediately asking Grandma if we could play Seven Pays. So she would. 4 hours. Every day. And she never complained or even sighed. As an adult, I'm absolutely floored by her infinite patience and stamina. She rarely lost her temper or raised her voice in anger, though you definitely know it if she was at all dissatisfied. She'd be sure to make at least one well-placed comment so her dissatisfaction was clear. Those of us who were in tune with her tendencies learned what to do or not to do to keep her dissatisfaction at bay. I think we all strove to make her proud, and I think we all succeeded, even if she failed to verbalize her pride in each of us. It was difficult to make her really laugh, so I always tried to get a real laugh out of her. Luckily, she and I share our senses of humor, so I was regularly successful making snarky comments or dropping one-liners. Grandma was generally uncomfortable with displays of affection, but she had a soft spot for babies and animals, dogs in particular. If any were around, she was either holding them, playing with them, or interacting with them. Dozens of photos snapped of her over the years include a baby, a dog, or both. Our family has always been a fan of snapping photos of the entire clan together, and we always had to take several photos because Grandma found it challenging to keep her eyes open when they were taken. It is likely that we have far more group family photos with Grandma's eyes closed than we do with her eyes open. Despite claiming she'd die every single year after Grandpa passed, she managed to continue stubbornly living on until December 20th, 2017. Before she closed her eyes forever, 5 sons-in-law, 1 daughter-in-law, 9 grandchildren, 6 grandchildren-in-law, 7 great-grandchildren, 1 great-grandson-in-law, and 3 great-great-grandchildren were added to her family. She was surrounded on her deathbed, some via FaceTime due to distance, by all 6 of her children, her daughter-in-law, 4 grandchildren, 1 grandchild-in-law, and 2 great-grandchildren. She was deeply loved and respected by us all, and she is already greatly missed.